Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. And we are zooming in and focusing in on a very popular viewer question that we're getting. And that is, how do I get over a relationship with a female psychopath? I have these recurring thoughts. I just can't get them off of my mind. No matter what happens, I can't seem to focus. So this is a very popular viewer question. So we're going to zoom in and focus in on that topic. And viewers who are in the recovery mode from a relationship with someone who's controlling or toxic or manipulative or narcissistic can also benefit from this content as well. So that is a great viewer question. So thank you so much. And so when we talk about recurring or intrusive thoughts, it means that you're constantly in a triggered state. You're constantly triggered. In other words, you're not in a state of homeostasis. You're not in a state of balance. You're not in a state of presence. You're not in a state of being. You're either reliving the past or sort of hyper living the future. In other words, things are spinning out of control as you think forward of what your future is going to mean, and also sort of swirling and whirling out, spinning off, if you will, just sort of trying to replay and relive the past. In other words, trying to sort through. It's, in my viewpoint, it's the body and minds and emotional body. It's the inner workings that are trying to bring to your conscious awareness, where you can then correct and become present to the knowledge of. So there's different layers of consciousness working here. It's to understand that the body is producing these recurring sort of incessant or obsessive thoughts, even in your dream state, because it's trying to lay out before you like a banquet of events or experiences, saying, hey, what happened here? Replaying and reliving these, trying to do like a still frame, the way that a coach would do with a basketball team that just lost their championship. In other words, let's play it, let's relive it. What happened here? Why didn't you throw the ball there? You know, you made a great shot here. This was awesome. We were doing great, and then boom. So it's really the mind's way to sort through and process what you've been through. And this is really how I describe it, as like a hyper aroused trigger state. So your pain body, what Eckhart Tolle might describe as your pain body, is overshadowing and overpowering your presence, your now, coming into the now. And, you might hear that phrase thrown around, live in the now, be present. However, to really experience this is a very difficult thing for someone who has been in a relationship with a female psychopath, someone who is hyper aroused or created a whole relationship based on triggering. In other words, based on button pushing, based on manipulation, based on deliberate and calculated ploys to get you to react, think, plan, behave, choose, and feel according to their disposition, according to their needs, according to the trap that they are laying out for you. Like a red carpet that you just walk along unknowingly, and at the end of the carpet there's like a big deep hole, and it just has all sorts of branches and twigs over it as well as carpet. So you continue to walk, and then boom, all of a sudden you fall down through this abuse, through this abyss. So it's just kind of like a bottoming out. Either things gradually begin to disrupt the relationship, a few missed calls, a few missed texts, a few missed dates, a few broken promises. Your paranoia is on hyper alert because you're hyper aroused and addicted to the gaslighting and brainwashing that the female psychopath will manipulate you with. And it's to understand once again that a psychopath operates without conscience. In other words, they are amoral, unethical, lack integrity. Despite the fact that they could be a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, an Indian chief, heads of state, heads of this, heads of that, whatever. It's to understand that there are people, types of people, who, based on their brain wiring and the activities in their brain centers, their sensitivity to dopamine, the reward neurotransmitter, inactivity in the prefrontal cortex, and as well as reduced activity and the amygdala, the area that puts you, basically on people, that gives them the arousal of to be afraid, to look out, to be cautious, to be careful. There's reduced activity in this area of the brain. So a psychopath is very slow or non-reactive in states where most people would be alarmed or have a moral standard or a social norm or be afraid or go to help somebody. So there's this instinctual response that is built in and wired into people and human beings as a species, which, says, help this person here, be, and it will cause you to feel sad or feel, different emotions that will rise up, that will cause you to help a victim, that will say, be afraid of this person, don't do this. That perhaps is not right. That's unethical. We should not hurt thousands of people. We should not enslave people. All these different moral codes are really sort of defunct and dismantled and disengaged in a psychopath. Yet, very interestingly enough, oftentimes this brain wiring is coupled with either high intellect. In other words, it's almost as if this handicap makes more pronounced other areas of their brain. So they begin to view things, situation, they have a keen ability to read people's body language, to sense their weak spots, to, smoke out their values, and then exploit them based on this. And we can call this button pushing, manipulation, control, but it's to understand that it's very deliberate and calculated. Whether this goes on for 6 months, whether this goes on for 3 years, whether this goes on for 10 or 15 years, they always have a plan. And that involves their rise to get whatever it is that they need, whatever the cost, no matter how many relationships that they cycle through. The psychopath will indeed cycle through a mass number of relationships. And to the extent that most people would not have the energy or the moral capacity to engage in. So people would not feel comfortable. Most people would not have the energy, the stamina, the endurance to do these things to other people. They just could not withstand the pressure, the risk, the breaking of hearts, the aftermath. Most people could not, quote unquote, live with themselves. They would not be comfortable going against their very own children, their very own siblings, their very own parents, their very own pets, their very own company. But the psychopath just blazes through this like a tsunami hurricane. It doesn't mean anything to them. There is no value set. There is no warm and fuzzy heart in there. There's something very cold and calculating and deliberate. It's very difficult to grasp onto this truth because their countenance, their face, their persona, their persad, their personality, their talent, their intelligence, their place in life, their status, their profession very much belays and betrays what is on underneath. These people are the best of the best of the best actors in terms of fooling and deceiving. Fooling and deceiving. We've all heard about lie detector tests and how they will equip in people's brains. They'll test the sweat on people's palms. In other words, physiological responses that are aroused when somebody tells a lie. Okay, this is wired and able to be monitored by a lie detector. And so a lot of psychopaths, because their wiring is so different, oftentimes they're able to fool the best of the best, including things like lie detector tests, things like criminal psychologists, not to mention the everyday person. These people have like a certain, almost like a biofeedback mechanism that just isn't working. When it comes to feeling sad, they've lost a pet. Most people would be grieving. They just don't feel a thing. So a female psychopath will tend to hyper arouse and hyper sexualize and really prey on the weaknesses of the individual or male that they are targeting, or in the workspace, the corporate environment, the family environment, whatever it is that they are involved in. However, when it comes to relationships of romance, it's to understand that a psychopath will basically suss out or smoke out another man's weakness, another man's call to meaning, another man's call to value. In other words, what they hold most dear or precious or value about themselves, whether it's a talent, whether it's something that's close to their heart, like a possession, a family member, a dream, a business, whatever it is that kind of is the core of that man, that is all open game to a female psychopath to exploit and ravage this. So this is what is particularly devastating, is that they will really, without mercy, without relenting, sort of break men down. And that is like a huge victory for a female psychopath, to feel this sense of power, to feel this sense of control, to feel this sense of domination. It's not like a healthy sort of accomplishment like, wow, I just ran, a 6-minute mile. I feel great about myself. I'm at the peak of my health. It's not that sort of accomplishment. It's just like, see what fools the everyday man is and see how I just get and take whatever it is that I want. So it's kind of like a ha-ha, joke's on you sort of devastation. It's kind of like an unfeeling look at you. Well, what are you going to do now, you poor whatever. And it's a very, very sort of cold. Cold doesn't even sort of describe the extent and the abyss to which they will sort of maim, hurt, and destroy their prey. Their prey, Prey. Not that they've prayed for, but that they prey on. You've heard about a con man, a con woman. This is what we're talking about. The relationship is all just a scam. It's manipulation, and the extent and the degree to which the woman can either get married, have double and triple lives, meaning they're one way, they're telling one person one story over here, they've got another story going over there, they're telling another story here. They're able to pick up roles and personas just like changing shoes. And it's very, very strange to witness, because when you hear them talk, even their area of expertise can vary based on who the crowd or who is around. So they can, present as extremely politically adept and yet very then country. Very sort of, divergent or discordant personality types can exist within the person. You might almost think, well, wow, this is like multiple personalities. But it's really just a show and a charade that is very superficial and basically just acted upon by a female psychopath. So they can really almost metamorphosize in front of your very eyes, just like a color-changing salamander or a mood stone, or like a color-changing octopus that you see, in the Jacques Cousteau movies, where they're doing these movies of the deep, and then they're following this octopus, and it's gray at one moment, and then it turns sandy white, and then it turns to look like a rock. It's hiding from its prey. It goes undetected. That's really what a female psychopath does. It's nothing, short of eerie or creepy to describe. It's eerie, creepy. People might say it's evil, it's demonic, however you want to describe it, that is up to you. However, it is very devastating and causes sort of this recurring, incessant thought pattern with people who are trying to recover and sort through. So, it can be very scary, very terrifying to expose the psychopath. In other words, see, look, here's your series of emails, here's your series of phone calls, here's your series of jobs, here's your series of wedding rings, here's your list of people who have divorced you, trying to kind of like a lawyer sort of lay out the case. And for some people, they do end up exposing the psychopath. They are, they see the lies, the deceit, the betrayal. They find the 3 cell phones. They find the luggage that's packed in the closet. They find, separate professional degrees. Whatever it is, they are, they find them out. And they usually have their jaw dropping like, OMG. And then there's this rising up to want to confront and sort of recover from the history of blows. In other words, the emotional blows, the blows to one's self-esteem, one's sense of reality, one's sense of focus, one's sense of self. We're talking about the very core of the core of the core of the core of the essence of the core of the person. So we're really talking way down deep where the betrayal is experienced and set up. So it's very horrific. It's on the extent of criminal. It is nothing short of that. So I understand why there's been a lot of popular questions about this, because it's a very, very solitary, and also life-changing, life-identifying, and lonely and sort of desperate place to be in, especially for men who are, quote-unquote, not supposed to be emotional creatures. Everything that a man stands for and represents is torn apart and thrown out the window. Every shred of being a man, of being strong, of being tough, of being resilient, of being able to persevere, of being a warrior, of being masculine, of being the head of the household, of being the provider, of being the unemotional one, all of a sudden is left to be a ravage of the antithesis of all these. So here you are, finding yourself in a pool of your own tears, lost in your own emotional guidepost, your own emotional compass, if you will. There is no true north anymore. Everything seems like it's lost. You feel lost. It's very difficult then for people who have been through this to control. There's a whole mix of neurotransmitters in the victims, in the targets, that in my viewpoint are not supposed to be mixed together. Love, addiction, bonding, coupled with devastation, betrayal, and paranoia creates this really bad, toxic sludge of emotions and neurochemistry that is then set up in the victim. It's just like it can cause thought disorder, feeling of desperation. My life isn't worth living. I don't know what it means to have a purpose. I don't know what it means to have a life. I don't know what it means to have relationships. I can't do my everyday experiences. I'm, constantly losing focus. It can really get you down to the core. I mean, it really, really is a desperate state of being. So it's to understand, though, to understand that your mind is trying to steady itself to focus. All this sort of spinning out is because you're trying to sort through what you've been through and then make sense and then sort of recall and recollect, like a basketball coach. Do you see the play here? Do you see the play here? This here, you could have passed it there. You saw it here, but you didn't act. Your reflexes, you were addicted. You were under the throes of addiction. The female psychopath understands quite well in part of the grooming, and that's the way kind of I describe it, the grooming of their targets is that they make them open and receptive to all these sort of letting your guard down, being vulnerable, seeing the real me, knowing the true dreams, and then placating and trying to pacify that, trying to say, oh, well, you'll be all this, with me. You will have all this with me. It's the best sex. It's the best food. It's the best sleep. It's the best house. It's the world. All these different things just seem to like all of a sudden give rise up out of anywhere. Oh my God, I can't believe God created such a magnificent creature. I mean, these are the sort of, feelings that people are almost like hypnotized by these types of people. And the way I describe it, it's kind of like a predatory paralysis, where it's like they have fangs, almost like a cobra. Does a cobra have fangs? Or like a poisonous snake, where they bite and paralyze the victim. And the victim is like, yep, I'm done. Put a fork in me, I am done. That's really sort of what I call the hook, line, and sinker. Some people call it the talons, or like being gripped. It's almost like sort of venomous fangs, which are, bitten through, putting their poison in under the skin, and then becoming addicted to the poison, becoming addicted to self-abandonment. And I could use some stronger words, but I'm not going to. It is a very, very disoriented place for the victim to be. Very disoriented. So it's to understand that to emerge from this and cease these recurring and repetitive cycling thoughts is to understand that this is the next step towards your healing. It's to understand that you unequivocally must go no contact with the source of this poison, the source of this manipulation, the source of this setting you up to be addicted to an illusion which is not real, not for you, not for any of the targets. So if you can take some solace, it's to understand that everyone, and especially those men whom have been groomed and targeted and sort of had that carpet, that red carpet laid out for them, that you are not alone in walking this walk. You are not alone by the dizzying addiction. You are not alone in the physiological, just fireworks, or oftentimes when it comes with the exposing, almost, what do you call it when you're like at the end of a firework display? Finale. It's like this physiological finale, which oftentimes is dizzying and overwhelming and completely, it takes you over. It's to understand that is the the beginning of the end of the trauma. So when you're going through this sort of, this epiphany, this sort of overwhelm of, what do we call it? A finale of all this, pain and drama and confusion and addiction to the hyper arousal in self-abandonment and sort of self-destructiveness, self-eroding that is, and I say this with no light terms. I say this with very serious and gravitas. I'm not exaggerating. And yet, once again, for everyday people who hear about this, they don't understand the depths of, again, the poison, let's call it the poison fangs, that pierce the skin, that run through your body. It is ingested. It is very much like a poison that you need to detox from. You need to let your body and give it time to process and get rid of all this hyper arousal, this sort of fear that is unique to this individual and how they overwhelm and groom their targets. And a lot of this sort of emerging might cause the feeling that, to end this cycle is to confront them, is to raise up in rage and attack and expose and exploit and turn in to the authorities and tell this person, that person, call their family, do things, just sort of really just sort of all this sort of reaction that you just want to let them know that they ain't gonna mess with you no more, that you have figured them out. So there's this feeling of sort of wanting to have this huge release and confrontation. Now, when you talk about the female psychopath or any psychopath, it's to understand that they don't really sort of learn, they don't have a moral sense. So a true psychopath, they don't feel that they've done anything wrong. They don't understand that they've hurt people because they don't get hurt themselves. There's no empathy. So in their mind, they're just being themselves. This is who they are. This is what they do. They hurt people. They, just plow through people. They just leave people, as has been described, in a wake of relationships. They just leave all these sort of destroyed lives in the wake of their life. I think that's a really good explanation. I'm not quite sure who said that, if it was Sam Vatkin or somebody else, maybe Dr. Robert Hare, but I think that's an accurate description when it is to understand that the psychopath, male or female, they just leave a wake, which means if you've ever looked past a boat, that sort of ripple effect that's going in the back, that's called a wake. Where the boat, and then you've got these, so it's just kind of like that the cause of the waves, it's as an effect of this boat with an engine passing through. It creates a wake, and it creates a ripple in that lake or that pond or whatever. So they leave a wake of sort of destroyed and hurt and maimed souls as a result of their relationships. And these can be individuals, businesses, companies, families, neighborhoods, communities, countries. I mean, it goes from the microcosm out to the macrocosm. It goes at all levels. So it's to understand, though, that once you go through this tumultuous sort of, you're one in the wake, in other words, you need to go through that before you get to the serenity, and then the waves stop rippling through you and playing through your mind. That's kind of like what the ripples are doing. They're going, they're still in that reactive, they're still in that momentum and trying to sort through things. But if you hang in there, these feelings will subside and they will begin to diminish. Just like the chords of a piano, when you play the chords, and then it fades off, it's very much the same way. So you have to hang on in there and wait for that fade to come through, for it to sort of settle down, for it to diminish, for it to basically wear itself out or die out or subside and be completely, but what's interesting is that as you realize this and you begin to sort of sort through this and work through a lot of the tools that I discuss, your lessons learned, it's to write this down and to get a sense and to understand oftentimes that the confronting will give you sort of a purge, but yet the psychopath does not really feel, once again, that they've done anything wrong. So once again, it's an exercise in futility to take this challenge and confrontation up with a psychopath, because in their mind of minds, in their heartlessness of heartlessness, they don't feel that they've done anything wrong. So for you to come and jabberwocky talk to them about this and that, to them, they'll be very non-reactive. They'll just be taking it more in. And to them, they're just saying, yep, I've still got him. I've still got him hooked. I've still got him addicted. See, look, he's coming back for more. He's wanting to work things out. Hey, do you still want to be in a relationship? Is what's going through their mind. So you have to understand that the psychopath isn't there to help you sort things out. They don't, you can also get this when, after you've had a huge spat, a huge fight with this person, that would be life-shattering, that most people would be, grieving for several days, if not weeks. They'll just sort of act like, or feel, or, present as if nothing has happened. You're like, you don't still want to discuss this? You're not still upset? You can tell that they're just carrying on as if nothing happened. So that's a true testament of a psychopath, when they just are very unaffected. It'll give you a glimpse into how different this person truly is, despite their good looks, wealth, position, possessions, history, future dreams, aspirations, other relationships. You're not dealing with the regular, beautiful, seductive Sally. You're dealing with something if you want to kind of sort of compartmentalize it, you're dealing with a cold machine that, is just sort of like a virus. It's just sort of like an artificial intelligence. It's only been put there to sort of manipulate and trigger you and hook you. That's all it is. It's like an algorithm that, computer scientists come up with. They get you hooked, that, like the Camel cigarettes, whatever it is, the Marlboro cigarettes, that are designed to hook you. Even if it's not good for your lungs, it's not good for your liver, it just has you addicted. And for them, it's profits. For them, it's, becoming a ginormous corporation. For them, it means whatever. So it's to understand that that is what you're dealing with. And if you can understand that and come to terms and grip, and that you will no longer serve yourself or placate yourself if you continue to sort of engage with them, keep pictures, keep items, keep thinking what you're gonna say to them, write them a letter. When you do, you're just fanning the fire. You're making things worse. You're deepening the hole. So we need to wrap up. So it's to understand that going no contact, keeping a written journal of lessons learned, and of sort of resensitizing yourself to your own values. Thank God I have exposed this person. Thank God I've exposed this. Thank God I'm getting help. Thank God I'm helping myself now. And having these affirmations will help you to reset your inner neurology and being able to focus and being able to re-embrace yourself as a caring, kind, spiritual, and loving and loved human being. What you experienced is the antithesis to this. So oftentimes you're like thrust onto the rocks through a stormy sea, onto sanity. So even though it might be a very rough landing, even though you might not even have a pair of tennis shoes, all you have is, the sand with which you've been thrown upon by this sea. You're gripping for dear life. You don't know where your next meal is going to come from, your next relationship, your next peaceful thought. It is ahead. But you need to detox. You need to give it time. You need to stop contact with this person 100%. Just like you would no longer take a drink, take a drug. Same thing with this. And just begin